Skin contains sebaceous glands, which are glands that secrete oil, the official name being sebum. There are also sudoriferous glands, which are the glands that secrete sudor, which we call sweat. And as you can see here, sebaceous glands are basically they're these little cloud-like bubbles that kind of come off of the hairs. So it's this structure that you see right there. This is why sebaceous glands secrete the lubricating substance of oil to lubricate the hair as it pierces the skin and grows through it. Because you do not have hair in the thick skin on the palms of your hands or the soles of your feet, you also don't have sebaceous glands in those areas. That would be bad. You would be sliding all over the place and you'd never be able to grab something because your feet and your hands would be covered with oil. Sebaceous glands are usually very abundant and large in the places that we associate with acne. So these glands are abundant and secrete sebum often in places like the face, the chest, and the neck. Yes, there are other places where they cause acne as well, but those places are not the most common. I want to point out here that sebaceous glands are lined with epithelial cells. Look very closely at the picture on the left. The epidermis, the dark pink color, dips down to cover the entire length of the hair. And look at how the epidermis actually surrounds the sebaceous gland as well. So this is true that the sebaceous and sudoriferous glands are lined with epithelial cells, usually simple cuboidal, but because sudoriferous glands are lined with epithelial cells, and sebaceous glands too, this kind of allows us to easily see the dark purple stain of epithelial cells. And you can see that in the picture over here on the right, not in that area, but in these two areas. Those are areas of sebaceous glands. You can also see the erector pili, or the smooth muscle that's right here that draws the hair more erect when you might be scared by something. There is a condition very common to babies called cradle cap. It's not a bad thing. It just happens sometimes weeks or months after the baby is born. The sebaceous glands in the scalp start to overact a little bit, and you get this kind of like waxy skull cap on your baby. Sudoriferous glands secrete sweat and are located all over the body in thick and thin skin, but are not located on nipples and genitalia. The major function of sudoriferous glands it's definitely thermoregulation. These glands secrete water onto the surface of your skin. And because of water's high heat capacity, it brings the heat along with it. As the sweat evaporates, the heat also changes from As the sweat evaporates, the water changes from liquid to water vapor form and then diffuses away from the skin, breaking the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules and cooling down the body. Although sweat is 99% water, there are other things in it, such as salts, antibodies, and wastes. There is something that's called your acid mantle. It's kind of like this very thin layer of sweat that surrounds your entire body, but it serves a little bit more of an immune function because that layer of sweat has immunoglobulins or antibodies in it. Your acid mantle is different than my acid mantle, and this is why the same skin products do not work the same for different people. Also, because your acid mantle functions in immunity, it is not good to be purchasing soaps that strip your skin of the acid mantle and dry it out. How can you tell if this is happening? If your skin feels tight after washing it, which many of us are able to detect on our face, then that soap is stripping away your acid mantle. There are two sweat glands on this cube of skin on the right here. And one of these sweat glands connects with a sweat pore located on the surface of the skin. So that thing right there is a sweat pore. But the other one over here on the right, it's coiled up and it's actually connected more to the hair, much like a sebaceous gland would be. So even though the sweat gland on the right does not dump out onto the skin, it does dump out onto the epithelial cells and the space that is between the hair and the epithelial cells. So it just provides like a little bit of extra lubrication for the hair. If you were to take any of these coiled up sweat glands and cut them in half like that, like do a transverse section on them, you would see something like these circles here in this histological picture on the right. This picture is stained with something called Mason's trichome stain, which does not produce the pink and purple colors of the H&E stain we're used to looking at. These epithelial cells here are colored in red, all surrounding the lumen of the coiled up sweat gland. The blue tissue around it is the dermis. In Mason's trichome stain, collagen fibers stain blue instead of pink. Also note that each sweat gland has its own dedicated nerve. There's one right here, and there's one right here. The nerves are attached, ultimately going to the outgoing nerves of your hypothalamus, which is an area in your brain that monitors body temperature and tries to make involuntary adjustments like activating sweat glands without your knowledge. There are two types of sudoriferous glands. Students constantly get confused here because there are two types of glands, sudoriferous and sebaceous. But there are two types of sudoriferous glands, eccrine and apocrine glands. Eccrine glands are definitely for thermoregulation, and they're located in the places that start to sweat first when you become hot or flustered. So not only does the action of an eccrine gland respond to thermoregulation, but they also have some kind of emotional response that we're learning about, kind of associated with flight or fight. Usually it's a fear-based emotional response, but we're still learning about it. There are lots of the eccrine glands on the palms of your palms, your forehead, and the soles of your feet. Therefore, if you were to wear a nicotine patch on any of these places, trying to get the time-released nicotine from the patch into your blood vessels, it wouldn't happen. Because sweat, as well as epidermal cells, oxygen, glucose, blood, they all diffuse superficially. Any type of patch is at a disadvantage of delivering the medicine. Because, of course, the patch wants its medication to move from superficial to deep. But all of the structures and substances in your skin are moving from deep to superficially. Apocrine glands, which are very abundant in your axillary or armpit and anogenital areas, have a function about which we are still uncertain. When I went to school, pheromones were they weren't like a whole bunch of crap, but they were just a theory and an idea gaining momentum. We find that there are substances and chemicals released from apocrine glands, and that these substances are different than the many other hormones and chemicals in your body. We're kind of unsure what their function is, but of course recovering a chemical from a gland is easy, but finding out where that chemical is then used in the body, that's not so simple. Therefore, there are lots of theories about pheromones, and many of them usually have something to do with the attractiveness or the increase of your ability to find and attract a mate. These pheromones are substances that are used, we know, are used in other animals, even mammals, but we're only slowly providing evidence of their use in humans. An article that I read probably about 10 years ago, it was really interesting to me. It said that people tend to run in social groups together based on their ability to interpret senses and incoming information. So the article suggested that people who like certain types of foods, who enjoy similar smells, that those people will naturally aggregate into a social group. And the article, it included mention of similar pheromones attracting people together into a social bond. And it's these pheromones that actually strengthened the social bond. So I'm sure that many of you right now are thinking of past or present relationships that meet some or all of these indicators. And I mean, we'll just leave apocrine glands at that, kind of an unknown function as of right now.